was on the council for 12 years.
Good to meet you.
But I've heard all these problems. I'm not complaining, but I just want to make these concerns of mine and some of the older residents that I spoke to aware of these. First off, I'd like to thank the police department, the sheriff's department, for the increased patrols that they've done in Bill City. They around, I sit on the porch and rock a lot, so I see them a lot. And they've done a good job. I've lived in the same house 39 years next month, or next month, but they've done a good job, and I've had one tricycle stolen, and that was 20 years ago, and I got it back. A young rode it up, and I found it the next day. But one thing, the main thing, I know you can deal with the right people on this, the schoolhouse. The property, the steep hill on the 2nd Avenue side is a real, several, maybe 100 yards of hills like this. That needs to be cleaned up because personally this year I saw 2 snakes, 1 armadillo, and 2 turtles because I walk my dog every day. And I know that probably needs to be, a lot of it dead now, and it wouldn't be it'd be bad, but it wouldn't be like
Is
something.
it weeds or trash? Or
Weeds,
weeds,
and
okay.
bushes grow, it just hadn't been cleaned, because school had been closed so many years, and probably never brought to your attention. Another thing, if any way, I would like to see some playground equipment when y'all have the money, put back on the Hemlock playground between Hemlock and 2nd Avenue. We at one time had some, and some of the elected officials, which I didn't get to vote, they decided to remove that equipment. And I was against it, but anyway, it passed, so that was the end of that. That was years ago. Another concern I had on mine, you mentioned this, a lot of property in Bill City, people moved out, and they're not, the houses are going down, but the yards, one house, I won't call the number, but one house had the grass cut one time in 2 years. I walk by just about every day, and that's another concern. And
have you turned that particular house into 311?
no, ma'am.
Okay.
But the neighbors right across the street, but both of them complained about it, and they just wouldn't speak. I'm not pastor,
Okay.
so, but that needs to be addressed. I did call the city about one of mine adjoining neighbors, and they came out and cut the grass and all. As a matter of fact, they done that twice. That was last year, but someone bought that house, and I'm glad that. But and another thing, to my knowledge, since Columbus took control of Bill City, I have not saw any road repaired in Bill City. Used to, we were allowed so many feet per year. I don't know how we'll get on the list again. But and another thing, I ride around Bill City a lot of times at night. I used to do this every month, count the street lights out. The street lights. The last time I counted, we had 4 out in the village. So a lot of, like I said, this is like a Christmas list. Man, I'm like a young. If we get one of them, we'll be happy. I will. But let's see. Road repairs, school, playground, and the yellow curves. As a city, we have a lot of curves, no parking.
Right.
Especially on Linden Point, right going down to the river wall. That needs to be highlighted because people don't know. There's no sign not to park. And the yellow paint is faded out so bad. I know when you go around at Linden Point, it's hard sometimes because they park illegal. They don't know it, so that's not their fault. And no signs. That's great. No signs. Street light, paint, playground, schools, roads. I think that's all I got.
All right.
I'll say one thing though, television does not do you like
You want the microphone back now, you just asked for it anytime. We're great, now we're off to a running start, and so we're gonna get some of these things answered for you, sir. Let's see, we've got to, regarding the school property and cleaning up the woods, Mr. City Manager, who do you think? Oh, I want to recognize Councilor Bruce Huff, too, just walked in. Thank you, Councilor Huff, for coming. Let's take one at a time. Who's best to address that? Is that, I guess that's school property, huh? Or would it not?
It's something we can handle, and I could help, and I do have all of the things that he's pointed out, and we'll assign it to staff.
Okay. All right, so that one we'll assign to staff, and we'll get on the list for Public Works. And the playground at Hemlock, playground equipment at Hemlock Playground, I didn't know, we've got Dr. James Worsley here. Do we want to give a quick update on Comer and sort of what's going on with the future for Parks and Recreation facilities and assets here in Bibb City? David, do you want to talk a little bit about where we are with the renovation of Comer Auditorium?
Well, as you may be aware, the construction to repair and renovate Comer Auditorium is underway. It is projected to be completed sometime this April. We have a rendering up here. If you go to the second one, a rendering up here of what the front will look like. Of course, we're returning it to its original facade. It had some enclosures done after the initial construction. We have completed the restoration of the cupola, which we're real proud of because it was in deplorable condition. But the facade will look like what it did back in the 1940s when the facility was originally built, and then we're going to have some landscaping improvements out front to further enhance the area. We also have, and I know it was when we were up here, this is Scott Allen with 2WR, he's the architect of this project. When we were up here meeting with Bibb City residents, one of the things that they asked us about was putting a police precinct in this facility. And we went back to the police chief, and unfortunately there's commitments already out there for precincts and throughout the city, and there's just not the capacity to have more precincts. But what we did do is we allocated space in the building, a corner office that has access to restroom facilities that will be a report writing facility for public safety in the area. The Sheriff's Department, which I know the Sheriff's Department has a very strong presence in Bibb City, and the Police Department, that they can come up here, access this building, go in for report writing, to eat dinner, whatever they might want to do. They have restroom facilities, and we felt like that would accomplish the overall objective of the community in providing facilities that will increase police presence in the neighborhood. And so we made that available, and it will accommodate increased public safety needs in this area. So this is the floor plan after the meeting. You'll be glad and you'll be welcome to drop by, take a look at the floor plan and the rendering of what the facility will ultimately be.
Thanks, David. And Dr. Worsley, if you would just speak for a moment about some of the recreational possibilities of having Comer reopen, and what thoughts you may have about potential equipment at Hemlock Playground.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening to everyone. Just to go back to talk about a little bit about what we're doing in the Parks and Recreation Department. One of the first things we're doing is our assessment of the community, and what that includes, it's a two-year process. It started back in January, and we're doing a total assessment of the community to find exactly what needs to be done facility for things such as family reunions or social events and things of that nature as well.
Thank you. Will you make a note about playground equipment as you assess the situation in this area? And
Duly done, yes.
make that part of your analysis. Great, thank you. We've had some citizens, gentlemen, we've got 3 seats up here, and then we've had another citizen come in. We got a bunch of seats up here, so y'all come on in and take a seat and join us. We appreciate you coming. Let's see, we also had code enforcement regarding a particular house. Sir, if you get with the city manager afterwards and give them, or just jot down the number, and we can have somebody go by, even if it's real, then we can track down the owner.
This house very interesting.
Yeah, and that's usually, those are the type that give us problems, obviously. But we can track them down, and we can even put weed liens. If we have to go and mow the lawn and take care of a tree or something, then we'll put a weed lien on the house if they're completely non-responsive. So there are things we can do, but we'll need that specific address. We can give that privately afterwards. We also had an issue about road resurfacing, and we actually have a system. David, you want to speak about our road resurfacing program?
Well, our roads are resurfaced based on an assessment that we do every 5 years, and through that assessment, the road, based on its condition, is assigned a grade from 1 to 100. And based on that grade, we start from the lower part of that list and work our way up. We feel like that's the most equitable way to spend the taxpayers' dollars, is to apply the limited resources that we have on the worst roads first. And we're working our way up through that list. I know in Bibb City there was a pipe repair or pipe replacement project back in the mid-2000s, and through that a number of the streets were torn up and resurfaced as a result of repairs following that stormwater project. We have been up through the area on some other projects, and the streets, although they're not 100%, they wouldn't grade out at 100. They're not as bad as some of the others that we are focusing on right now. So I would just say that. I say all of that to say that when the condition of the road, we reach the number that street is currently graded, we will be applying the resurfacing to it. However, some streets degrade quicker than others because of a variety of reasons, construction, traffic, or just a number of reasons. So if you feel like a street is in extremely poor condition, go ahead, call it in to us. And what we'll do is we'll give it to one of our engineers, and they will go out and they will look and see if the actual condition of the road marries up with what our grade says it is, or is supposed to be. If it doesn't, well then we will add it to one of our current resurfacing lists, because we know this list isn't perfect. So if you feel like you have a street that is in extremely poor condition, let us know what it is, and we'll be glad to come out and do an assessment.
We don't have any bad sun, well, I know that. And another thing, what the condition of the sidewalk, how many inches do they have to be sticking up before we need to call them in? You know how the sidewalks will buckle up? The limbs grow up under them and the sidewalks are uneven?
Well, if you have one that presents a safety hazard, go ahead and call it in and let us send someone from engineering or public works out and take a look at it. Because if there is a rise or a difference in the elevation of the sidewalk, it could be a trip hazard, and we need to take a look at that just from a risk management standpoint.
It's sticking up 4 or 5 inches.
Yeah, and when we say call it in, what we mean is from your hardline phone, you just dial 311, and they'll say Citizen Service Center, and then you tell them exactly which road, exactly which sidewalk, where it is, what house number, is that's closest to the area you're concerned about. And we put that on a list, and they go out and have to check it off. And so when David says call it in, that's what he means. Now, if you can tell us today before you leave the name of the street you're concerned about, the area of the sidewalks, we'll make a note and report it as a result of this meeting here tonight, because we've got people, taking notes and that good stuff. We'll add it to that list and get somebody out to take care of those problems. But we'll also, David, when they're out checking on the specifics, maybe they can drive around, just look at some of the other roads and sidewalks.
Well, and I was gonna say, no matter how small you think the problem is with the sidewalk or anything else, dial 311 anyway.
Well, she said, I dialed 311, but I got a cell phone.
Oh, okay, then you can dial 653-4000.
653-4000.
I reported one busted is a leaking pipe. It's been that way for 2 years before the water bubbled up. And I reported it to one of the city crews, but that's just a minor thing. But I'll tell somebody about that now.
Okay.
And Mayor, I'll just say, when you provide me the specific address where the overgrown yard, we're gonna have them actually wrap an entire area and make notes of overgrown yards, and then we're gonna have them check the street lights at night that you indicate.
Oh, I realize, you know, I was just used to doing that for Big City. I just brought all that. I know y'all ain't got time to ride the street like I do.
Well, we do. We've got folks that do that, yes, sir. And we're actually doing a street light audit right now, aren't we?
Well,
Yes,
in
sir.
process.
In the process of doing it.
Yeah, inventory, and he mentioned the yellow curves, paint faded out, we'll have to look for that.
Okay. And also on Linden Drive, not only the paint out, but the signs, if there's supposed to be no parking signs that have come down over time, or just assess whether or not there needs to be a sign, or whether the yellow curve will do. Yes.
On Linden Point, where he's talking about with the no parking, that's been a real issue for safety vehicles. If there are cars parked on the road on Linden Point where there is not supposed to be parking, fire trucks and ambulances cannot get around the point, and it makes it difficult even for a police car to get around it. So it becomes a real safety issue because that's your entrance to the brick wall.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that. Thank you. And if you have any other questions, just raise your hand. We've got folks, Josina here, and of course Mike, this young lady in the front here, will bring you microphones. Yes, ma'am.
Could you give an update on the long-range transportation plan, and is there any discussion for Columbus applying for bicycle-friendly community status?
Oh, okay, that's great. Is Rick Jones here on our someone from planning? I know we've got the planning table up here. Will, do you know about, we applied, I guess, 3 years ago and received honorable mention, as you know, and we've been working to improve. The question is about being a bicycle-friendly community. And so when are we going to be applying again? And we're in the middle of a alternative transportation plan. So why don't you tell us a little bit about alternative transportation plan, if there's any public meetings or any public input. Obviously, we've got several people here that are interested, and also mention about applying for being a bicycle-friendly community.
Can't really speak to applying for the bicycle-friendly community. I'm just not aware of it, but I will tell you the alternative transportation plan. We had the first 2 public meetings in, I think, October and November. That's sort of a preliminary fact-finding meeting. Didn't have a great deal of turnout. The consultants have gone back and have gotten the information from the citizens who did show up, but there will be another round of public meetings with their findings, and it's mainly focused on pedestrian, bicycling, and mass transit. So it should be coming back sometime late winter, early spring.
Will, a couple of things. One, about turnout at forums. We have that problem from time to time where we don't have a lot. If you will let us know when the consultant wants to, so we can get it out through our other means like Facebook and a press release and means other than just putting the note in the newspaper, which oftentimes people don't notice. And also, I know that we do talk often about being a bicycle-friendly community, working through, I know there's several on our Citizens Advisory Committee that talk about it from time to time and urge that. And we have added, of course, many miles of bike trails to our community, and that would certainly help. So since last we applied and received honorable mention. And so that information is available. I just hate that Rick Jones isn't here tonight. So perhaps what we could do is get your name and information and supply that to you. Are you a member of one of the local clubs? Okay, and then maybe what we can do is share that information with those in your group, and that will also help us get more participation in these forums, because what happens sometimes is, in the past, we haven't had a lot of the means available through the social networks and so forth to get word out, and a handful of people show up, and so the report ends up being what the consultants think is the best course, and not a lot of feedback from the citizens. And so we're going to do a whole lot better job at getting people at the next forum. You'll work, the city manager in my office will really crank it up and work with the various organizations, get your membership out, and make sure we make it a big deal, because it really is a big deal. And we need to make sure that Columbus is on the cutting edge of alternative means of transportation. So, anything else, yes, sir?
Related to that, the Riverwalk is.
Let's get your microphone so everybody can hear you.
Sure. Related to that, the Riverwalk is very dear to us here in Dip City, and I just wonder if you could give us a sort of an update on potential completion of the entire thing, specifically this section right here.
Yes, we can. David?
Well, making the connection behind the mill here to the lower level down by the pavilion, that is a transportation special purpose local option sales tax project. It's a $10 million project, and it's in Tier 1, which means it's in a group of projects that will be done in the first 3 years. So it's high on our priority list. We are already doing some preliminary planning. We have some concepts about how to make that connection from behind the mill here down to the pavilion. As soon as we are able to execute a management contract with the Department of Transportation about these projects, which should be in January sometime, and then we will begin collecting the sales tax in January as well. We will be able to engage an engineer to begin design. We got some property acquisition that we'll have to do as part of that project, and then we look to bring that project forward as quickly as possible. I don't want to give you a projected date that would have it under construction, because there's a lot of variables to that, but it will be one of the first projects that we will bring to construction under the Transportation Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax. There's another small section down by City Mills. It's only about 300 or 400 yards long, but we have already executed, or we're about to execute, an easement agreement with the property owner to go ahead and make that connection. So with those two connections, we'll have the Riverwalk complete from Lake Oliver Dam all the way to Fort Wayne.
Thank you. And I also want to recognize Councilor Pops Barnes has joined us. Thanks, Pops. Yeah.
Could you tell us about the revitalization of Second Avenue?
Right. Okay. A couple of things. As I said before, usually before communities go over that hump to a renaissance and a renewal, as they say, it's darkest, before dawn, so to speak. And so there becomes a tipping point when you see all of these vacant properties, and you think, how will this place ever be revitalized? How can people possibly ever come back here? And it actually ends up being those vacant properties sometimes that allows the catalyst for revitalization. And to be more specific, from about just north of Total Systems to Bibb City, there is a lot of vacant, abandoned property that has reverted to the city for various reasons, because it was community block grant money, and either it wasn't handled pursuant to those guidelines, it was defaulted on, whatever the sort of death, those lands have come back to the city. Some of them have been acquired for various other reasons, perhaps demolition liens or whatever, back taxes, but the city's holding them down, and it's a lot of property, and I'm sure, not to speak for council, but certainly from the mayor's perspective, the city's not really in the business of hoarding property. And so we've now become a major player, which is a good thing. On the one hand, it's bad that the city's had to acquire this property. On the other hand, it's good that the city that wants a broader vision, and a vision I think that's supportive of the community and the neighbors that live here, is such a major player in the revitalization effort. I say that to say that when was it? I guess the summer, time really flies, maybe it's September, I was invited to the Mayor's Institute on Urban Design. Mayor Joe Riley of Charleston invites several mayors, and this year he invited 7 to come. And it's a big deal. I really wasn't familiar with it at all, but they sent planners to Columbus to interview our staff on what our resources were in the community for potential renewal. And the whole object is to brainstorm about an area that is thought to not, to be in distress, and to brainstorm about the possibilities. Anyway, through that process, they selected as our most viable area for revitalization, basically, I guess, the 21st Street through 25th Street areas, and we're very excited about it. I too was very excited about it, I have to say, but I actually thought they would pick somewhere else. And so I went up. I say all that to say that when we made the presentation, there were people there from all around the country. There were people there from Spain, because they invite experts in to hear the presentation. People went bananas about the potential of this area. And I mean, there were people there from Fresno and St. Louis, mayors there from Fort Worth, from all over the country. And this was best in show, by far. And so that just tells you that sometimes we don't realize the value of what we're sitting on. And the reason why it was, quote, best in show is the area with the most potential to build a community again. And what I say is single-family homes and duplexes and triplexes and people living at different income levels. And because you already have that. You already have that. You have a street grid that's very good. You have First Avenue, which is set up to be a neighborhood commercial area where little shops, coffee shops, dress shops, whatever, could go and people could walk there. You're right next to a linear park. You're right next to a river. In what city, think about every city you've ever been to. Where is the most desirable property? On the beachfront, on the lakefront, on the riverfront. And here you sit, a community with a great laid out street grid, with the housing stock that's still existing in really good shape. And I know we think, well, that hadn't been painted in 10 years, and they're letting them, but a little bit of paint and a new roof, and it's a whole new ballgame for some of these houses. And so you've got good existing housing stock where you've got vacant properties. It doesn't take much of an imagination for those people that are in the planning business to see a community and a neighborhood coming back in a very significant way. And so hopefully we'll get to a point here very soon where we can start having a conversation about a master plan for this area with the citizens, with council, with our staff, and talking about what is the city's vision in this area where we own a whole lot of property, where there's neighbors and folks that want to see something good, and this tremendous resource of the river. And I say that to say that there are a lot of great villages that have popped up next to rivers that were cited for us to go look at. One was South Main in Denver. It's near Buena Vista in Colorado. It's Buena Vista, Colorado. And the community is called South Main. And when I looked it up, it looked exactly like Bibb City. And it's been completely renewed because people want to be near the river. And they want that lifestyle. They want to live in small lots. And they want to live with people at different income levels. They want to live with people that used to live and work in the mills, and people who just moved here yesterday. They want that vibrancy and that diversity. So anyway, that is a vision for renewal. And the whole point of that is to say there's nothing specific. There's just a whole lot of potential. A whole lot of potential. Yes?
Teresa, if you can follow up on that question, thank you. What could we expect specifically at 35th and 1st, where right below the North Highland Dam is going to be the put-in for Whitewater?
Okay.
And then as these people float down the river, what's going to happen, at least on our side of the river? What's it going to look like?
Well, and that's part of the planning process. Who wants to speak about the specifics of what the put-in will look like? That may be an uptown question, but we might have David.
Well, the construction work that's planned right now for the Whitewater project is primarily a put-in, and it's basically a ramp that will go down into the riverbed. There's also construction work that's being done beginning, I think, this week as far as mobilization goes by Georgia Power to construct a weir across the little channel to maintain the water level in the turbines. Beyond that, the work at the pavilion area, they will have to remove the pavilion itself and reconstruct it and possibly even the restrooms, and they'll be replaced in like-kind condition. Beyond that, right now, the plan is just to restore what is already there and to rehabilitate whatever damage may have been done to the road and things of that nature. When we bring in the T-Splosh project for connecting the trail, is when we have an opportunity to really make a difference in that area. And we have several concepts, as I mentioned earlier, that are kind of on the board that we really need to flesh out before we start talking about them publicly. But that gives us an opportunity to make some improvements down there that will hopefully make it a little small community center, an area for gathering on the riverfront, more than just the parking lots and restaurants.
Right. A couple of things. I think we are at a point where maybe we need to start having some community meetings about what the citizens would like to see for their area. One thing that is concerning is that when you have something in your community that's successful, the success comes as a tidal wave. And if you're not ready for the growth, you'll wake up one day and find you have mini marts and things that maybe you don't want in your community because you haven't planned and you haven't thought ahead. One of the things that one of the consultants said that I thought was so interesting was, he said one of the worst things that can happen is that you find yourself with a bunch of mansions along the bluff, because this is your, Boston Commons, it's your Central Park, it's your, round off some things, and I've quoted him several times, if you've seen in the newspaper when we're talking about the river. This is the type of thing that's going to last, whether it's in uptown or it's up here in Bibb City. 150 years from now, people are going to be enjoying whatever it is we do. And we need to think about what that is. And do we want to deny public access to the bluff? And so those are some serious conversations we need to have. And if you make it mansions and $2 million homes overlooking the river, which happens in a whole lot of communities, you will deny access and you also will not have density. And so, it's going to be one of those things of, do we have overlooks that are public, like little park areas where you can overlook and anybody can come and see? What type of density do you want in the community? Do you want to try to create housing that stays at various income levels? And so maybe it is time that we start having some sort of community workshops about that. So let us get together and get with council and see what their thoughts are on going ahead and doing that, because I do fear waiting too long and having that tidal wave and not being able to control then or have any sort of influence of what our 150-year future is going to look like. So, all right. What's next? Yes, sir.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to ask a question about traffic lights, and I know that surprises you. What are we going to do to really improve our traffic lights? It seems like we're almost going the wrong way lately. You look at the traffic lights, in particular down around Lake Bottom Park. 17th and Cherokee is a great example of timings that have been changed, and we back up traffic for 2 blocks during rush hour. We have 60-second cycles now, seems to be the common factor on a lot of our traffic lights, and we're doing exactly the opposite of what we want to do. It makes it pedestrian unfriendly, it backs up traffic and creates congestion and all. And it seems like we have all these big plans and all for an ATMS system and everything else.
they've given their contractor, which is a DOT project, their contractor until the end of this month to complete their work before we can kind of flip the switch on the traffic coordination center. We just have completed through an energy efficiency grant, signal timing project on, I forget how many, Donna, you may be able to give me the number. 199 of our traffic signals. And through that, the effort is directed at improving efficiency and the flow of traffic. Through that, though, we have identified in the early phases of this, at least a couple that it has caused the adverse effect. And we've had to go back in on those. And we'll continue to work through that process. But the whole purpose of applying the funding to that effort was to improve efficiency, to reduce the amount of waiting time in traffic signals from an air quality standpoint, from a gas usage standpoint, and just to make it more convenient for the public. But in 190 traffic signals, of course, sometimes you're going to run into some problems, and we've had to address those, and we'll continue to work with them.
What about the one at 17th, Cherokee? That was one I think I received a complaint about and turned in. Is that going to be resolved, or where are we in that?
The report that the consultant gave us on a very detailed report on each one of those traffic signals, and it's a little over an inch thick, I guess, for 190 individual reports, so the before and the after. I don't know what the specifics are on the 17th, but we'll certainly look at it if it's still a problem, and come back in and try to make any adjustments that are necessary.
I would love to see that report, because I am very familiar with congestion management reports and all that, and I think there's something fundamentally wrong with the way the traffic lights are being set.
It's been a problem for a long time, and so I appreciate the comment. It's not just a few citizens that think that either. I mean, it's broad-based, and so, you know, I have to say I'm surprised we're still talking about this, seriously. So let's figure out, get Jim a copy of the congestion management report if we can. And Jim, let's create a forum. If you'll let me know when the next Citizens Advisory Committee is, I'll be there. We'll get the city manager there, the deputy city manager there, and let's have this discussion at the Citizens Advisory Committee, because it's televised. All the citizens can see it, and we'll all be there so that hopefully the buck will stop getting passed. Okay? Oh, we've got our chair from the CAC. Yeah.
We're going to have a little demonstration type field trip for all Citizens Advisory Committee members down to the Annex building to go to the new traffic control system where all the cameras and everything around town. Let us see the things that are happening. That was a great opportunity for us to come there as well. If you'd like to join us at that event, it will be the second Tuesday at 3 o'clock.
Okay, if you'll let me know about that. And I love the fact we're getting the automated system. I think that's great. But it's sort of what Jim was talking about, the blocking and tackling. I just wonder if maybe there's something to it I can't appreciate because I'm not a traffic engineer, but and I'm sure there's a huge system, and if you make an adjustment here, it has ripple effects. But I would like to hear, I'd like for somebody who's a skeptic, if you will, Jim, I hope you'll proudly wear that title, a skeptic reviews the congestion management plan, and let's have some conversation about it. I'd like to see where we are with that, so we'll get that to you. All right, what else do we have? Michelle? Oh, I know Rick's got something.
Mayor, could we talk about homelessness?
Yes.
I'm very involved in it and interested in it. We have people here who are. We have a lot of homeless resource providers in this neighborhood, and we have a lot of homeless people in this neighborhood in terms of where we are thinking about it and moving forward to eliminate it and make it atypical.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to that. Goodness, I guess a year or so ago now, council made a major step, a leap of faith, if you will, to invest in the opportunity to begin to eradicate homelessness and the problems that surround homelessness. And through that process, the United Way stepped up to take the lead. A board was she just happened to give an update today at City Council, and I asked her to come to this meeting because I figured it would probably be a topic of conversation. So, Christy, if you'd like to say a few words about where we are and how it relates specifically to the 2nd Avenue corridor, the consolidation, if you will, geographic consolidation of some of the resource providers. Some of your thoughts.
Good evening. I actually have my presentation from City Council today, and I'll be glad to go over it right now with you. But in the short term, one of the things that Home for Good is doing is we are charged with implementing the city's 10-year plan to end homelessness. There are a tremendous amount of resources and service providers in our community who work with the homeless on a day-to-day basis, and really what the plan is trying to do is improve the overall system of care. So we really want to look at what are the long-term strategies for reducing and ending homelessness. And looking at how do you increase permanent supportive housing, how do you improve employment opportunities, how can we even strengthen our collaboration and work not only within the service provider network, but start reaching out to mainstream providers and really helping to facilitate services for the folks who are facing homelessness. So part of what I presented today to City Council is to kind of give an update on where we are, what we've done this past year, but really to talk about where our priority focus is for 2013. And I think a lot of that really has an impact for along 2nd Avenue and for directly in this community as well. We really are trying to do a specific focus on increasing permanent supportive housing, because what we know is a lot of our homeless individuals not only need housing, but they face multiple issues such as mental health issues, substance and abuse recovery issues. So if we can increase the amount of permanent supportive housing, which is long-term housing with wraparound services, support services, a lot of national research has shown that people are able to become stable and they stay housed. Even at a one-year mark, it's about 85% of people who are placed in permanent supportive housing stay housed. So that's very exciting. We have a proposal that we've been working with the Housing Authority on that, and we are kind of waiting word from HUD on a moving to work application that the Housing Authority has submitted, but that's a big step that we're taking. The other thing that we really are looking at, because again, during the day, I know you probably see a lot of traffic through the area, are exploring options for a day resource center, so that people actually have a place to go during the day. And it's not only a place for them to go, but to have structured activities. So if it's around employment training opportunities, it's also, again, talking about some of those supportive services that people may need, but trying to have a centralized location for people to access services. So that's another priority for 2013. And then we really are looking at, again, the collaboration, how do we strengthen that? Because again, agencies are doing a tremendous amount of work, but we think we can do a better job of doing that and really want to be creative in how we form some of the partnerships.
Thank you. The Day Resource Center is something we saw on an intercity trip to Oklahoma City, and it was amazing how it allowed individuals who are experiencing homelessness to be together, to have community with one another in a very dignified and safe setting for them, and have them off the street, not congregating in front of someone's business, which is where you get these conflicts with the community that aren't good for the community, and they're certainly not good for those individuals experiencing homelessness, because it puts them in a threatened position when business owners and homeowners are calling the police to deal with somebody who's simply loitering, if you will, or trying to find a place to be out of the rain or out of the street. And so there are a lot of efforts being made in other cities that have been successful, and we would love to cherry pick those good and successful ideas and bring them here to Columbus, and through Home for Good and through some of our other partners in the community and our own staff. I just feel like we've got some good solutions in our near future for improvement of that and to relieve some of the pressure that's coming because of the support services being so consolidated on 2nd Avenue and the parks. And also, we've just had State Representative Carolyn Hughley join us. Welcome.
comment about, and thanking the police department and the sheriff's department who have been Johnny on the spot for our neighborhood association here in the Bib, about increasing patrols, reassuring us that when we call, we're not being a bother. We don't want to call about things that are not important, but when we feel threatened or uneasy about something that's going on in our neighborhood, we encourage people to know our neighbors. But they have just been wonderful, and we really appreciate their attention to us, and they're responding quickly and being friendly about it. And Seth Brown has been, I mean, we ought to give him housing here in the Bib as much time as he spends up here, but I'm sure his family would object to him spending even more time here at nights as well. But we thank the city for that increase through many calls to Isaiah and David's office and public safety as well. We thank them for that.
Thank you. That's so good to hear. And I know there's a lot of work to be done, but when a neighborhood association is formed, and I'm actually, Seth, going to ask you to speak just briefly about neighborhood associations, but when a neighborhood association is formed, more than just a crime watch, which is good too, but it really does create a social vehicle for people to know one another socially and begin to feel comfortable sharing their schedules and information, which allows your neighbors to be more informed about activity that's not normal for your house. And that, of course, in a sense, almost deputizes everybody in the community and really allows law enforcement to be effective. Because sometimes we get random calls from other communities, the police want to help, but they don't have enough information to piece things together, and good neighborhood associations really help us do that. Seth Brown is our crime prevention director, and Seth must speak just a minute about neighborhood associations in Bib City.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Bib is the poster child for everything that can go right when the community basically says that we've had enough. We've got statistics out front that show what they've done in just less than really 2 years in this area by banding together and pushing everything out. And they've also, the association is a unique organization as opposed to a watch. The association umbrellas everything. So what Bib did was they had a neighborhood improvement group almost that did the gardens down here that's right near Marquette and Rick's house in the corner there. They also had a cleanup day where they went through neighborhoods, yards. They even, if somebody was outside and they said, hey, can we get those limbs out of your yard? They did all that. I mean, it was a full day of work that happened. And there's been other things too. I know that Chris isn't here tonight, but Chris, they did a food drive that I know that the McKnights were involved in, and they did. They found out who the people that were in their homes that couldn't get out, checking on them on a regular basis. So it's a little more than just a watch. It's a more of a cooperative effort. Of course, I'm preaching to the choir here, but we Rose Hill found out about what Bib was doing. Rose Hill jumped on board. It's been a little bit slower trying to get off the ground, but Waverly Terrace, which is right near y'all, has done the same thing, and it has exploded. It's done about the same thing that Bib has done. Matter of fact, I get a weekly email from them stating we saw this or we saw that or whatever the case is, and then I turn it over to the right people. One thing about the school, because there's a school that's there that's closed. It used to be a technical school, so I forwarded it, and Justin Craig, who's with the Columbus Historical Foundation, he and I worked together on some stuff. So it's a huge cooperative effort. I'll give you one more quick story. There was a case, and I can't remember the name of the subdivision, but it's off Molly Road, and we just put an association in there. And they use an email system kind of the same way the Bib does. They use a Facebook, though, really, and a lot of the others use an email system. There was an individual who had came to somebody's house, who had knocked on the door, and they had cameras on the house. The person pulled the ski mask over his face. There were pictures of all this. Within like hours, they had this sent out to all the neighborhoods, the surrounding neighborhoods. And I can't give you a lot of details, but that person was caught today within less than a week. And there's pending charges against him based on that. On all that stuff that neighborhood did, and by the cooperation with PD and Sheriff's Office. So, as I've always said, without the cooperation of the citizens, my office is completely useless. They do all the work. I just kind of push the right buttons and kind of push things in the right direction. But those are the success stories that just continue to come through. And Chief Bourne can tell you with the Neighborhood Watch program, it's been the same. The association is just a more collective effort is all it is.
I know you have those handouts. Do you recall any of the statistics? I saw some with 75% reduction.
My son was just trying to give it to me.
Oh, good. Okay, well, why don't you rattle off a couple?
Mayor, I'll let you do it if you want.
Well, I don't have a glass.
Okay. The robbery rate has decreased by 100%, aggravated assault by 75%, burglary by 67%, larceny by 15%, and motor vehicle by 40%. And that's just the Part 1 crimes. That doesn't give you the story of the neighborhood effort of watching out for each other just from illnesses or landlords that may not be doing what they're supposed to do, and the area puts pressure on them to do the right thing. So, I mean, it's a snowball effect that kind of gets going. And Bid used to be my big success story, but I really believe that Waverly Terrace and Rose Hill is catching up with y'all quick, so y'all need to do so. I'm telling you, I'm saying. So,
keep it going. All right, thanks very much, and thank you for what you've done. And we know, as we mentioned those statistics of reductions of 100% and 75%, I know there's somebody in the room thinking, yeah, well, my lawnmower got stolen last week, so, you know, and that's always the way it is. We know that just because there's been a reduction in crime, it always can flare up tomorrow. We know also that if crime happens to you, it's one crime too many. And so we appreciate and respect that, and we continue to seek to eliminate all crime, though we know that goal isn't possible, we'll fall short, but at least we'll be closer to the mark than if we weren't cooperating and partnering with neighborhoods such as that in Bibb City, Waverly Hall, and Rose Hill and others. So thank you all for what you are doing. We're getting very close to the end, but that doesn't mean we can't continue to take great questions. Who's next? Maybe two more questions. Yes, sir.
I'm a resident up here in Bibb City. I stay at the red light up here on the 38th and 2nd. I noticed the city, where the house that I stay in, they built, they planted several trees up there, like the crepe myrtles and stuff. But the city planted them there, but they don't come back and trim them and cut them, you know. But I've been cutting them lately myself, because the house that I stay in, the 2 trees are in there, and they put 2 on the side.
Yeah. So
I have to kind of keep them trimmed, because you don't trim the crepe myrtles back, they can, after they grow back a certain period of time, they seem to bend over. But like I said, the city planted them there. A couple there, they planted them this year, and they maybe the first 2 the year before.
Right.
And along that 38th Street side right here, the brick repairs are getting too heavy, and they falling over in the street, and they have fell over in the past, and they had to, you know, my landlord or the landlords there had to come get them cut.
Right.
And they're hanging over in the street, and there's one down here as you're coming up the hill on 2nd Avenue, down past the animal clinic. It's hanging over in the street. And a lot of times those 18-wheelers come through there, the top of the tree will hit the trucks and everything. And another thing, when they turn in here to 38th Street, there's a lot of traffic on the street from Tuesday on up until Friday.
Okay.
And the trucks kind of tight. And then when they come in here, people have to back up to let them in here, because they couldn't go in down on the 35th side, because they have built that new, the city built a new medium in the street down here as you turn in down there, because they go to this warehouse and then they come up here. And they have knocked a lot of power lines down here on the 38th Street side, because they were hanging down too low or whatever.
Right, okay. All right, great. We're going to make a note that at 38th Street and 2nd Avenue, we need to get up there and look at some of those Bradford pears and some of those crepe myrtles. Let me just mention, because this happens all the time, crepe myrtles are supposed to be trees. They're supposed to be 25 feet tall, just like a dogwood or something else, like a cherry tree. And so a lot of people think they're supposed to be cut back because they're supposed to be low-growing kind of bushes. And actually, they're not supposed to be cut back. You think they are. They may need, the low limbs need to be trimmed maybe, But the tops need to keep going because they're gonna be a tree someday, and that way you can see underneath it, you got your canopy. So, and the other thing is, if it's on city property, the tree is city property, and I just say this for everybody's warning, do not touch a tree that's city property. You gotta call the city, because you actually could be fined for it. So, yeah, so we didn't hear any of the other stuff, just don't go doing it. And leave your clippers, but what you do is you call 311, you call 311 on your hard line, and that's what you're paying taxes for. Make us come do it.
Yeah, but they come out there and water them, but they don't come back in and cut
Yeah,
them.
well,
We got a couple of we got one right here on 35th Street where those trucks come by,
yeah.
and the house is on 35th and First, at the end right there, right on the second house you come on 35th, and it's a crepe roll now, and it's been hanging on the street for long.
Well, we're gonna look into that, and we're gonna limit up. Sometimes what happens is people top them off, and then they do lay over because they just. I mean, imagine if you got a cherry tree and just went and took the top out of it. What would happen? The new limbs would grow, and they would hang down like this because it doesn't have a solid trunk to get it up 25 feet. So we're gonna look at these, and you dial 311. Next time you see one, we'll come out there and get it.
Like I said, the house on 35th is 107 35th Street. It got a dead limb on top of that house, and it's been hanging there for the longest. I mean,
Okay, if it's on private property, we may have some issues, but we can go by and take a look at it. Maybe get with the property owner and see what we can do.
Right. And then, like I said, a lot of those Bradford Parish right here on 38th Street that's in bad shape too.
Okay, they do sometimes. I've seen them catch trucks, so we'll get to those. Mr. City Manager, you wanted to say?
Mayor, I was just going to remind the gentleman and other citizens, when you call 311, you can also request that they talk to you when they come out to take care of your service request. You can request. So if you call 311 and you'd ask that someone talk to you, the resident, when they come out to do the request that you asked for, they would then ring the doorbell, they would meet you at a specific time, and then they would tell you, we can't cut that tree, if that's the case. So feel free, when you call 311, to make a request that the employee coming out to take care of the work order see you. And they will.
Okay, tell me this though, what is those crepe roads, like I said, out there on the front end, on 2nd Avenue and 38th Street?
I have planned, me and my landlord have planned where we put some,
don't tell us too much.
well, I'm not trying to say too much to take any kind of trouble, but we put some, those winter flowers around the crepe road flower bed, kind of make it beautification of the street, whatever, pansies. I mean, if you know, when you turn in there, I mean, we developed that.
Okay, well, great, we appreciate that.
I mean, if you can notice it once you come in there, because it's a bed of pansies all around those crepe roads, you know, you put pine straw and everything, so.
Yeah, and many of you may not know that we buy hundreds of trees on an annual basis, and citizens throughout our city will call us and request a tree be planted on the right of way in front of their home if there's enough right of way, or in various locations within their community. And we buy those trees, and we typically around February, so January, February timeframe, we will plant trees at citizen request in neighborhoods or in front of the property on the city right of way. So just for your information. And so someone may have requested those trees that were planted in the area that you're talking about, and that's why they're there.
Well, I was thinking in the past, because they took down 3 of those Bradford Parish there on 38th Street side. They took them down, they fell down, they cut them on down, they never did plant anything there after they took them down.
Well, thank you. We're going to get with you. I think we took some notes, but if you have some other areas specifically, we'll get some notes down. We'll get some folks out there and see what we can do about limits and things up, okay? And now make us work for that tax money you're giving us, okay? Go doing our work for us. All right. What else we got? Anybody else? time. Anyway, I wanted to tell you the next stage of this is we've got some tables set up. We've got, of course, the fire department in the back. We've got the marshal's office. I'm sure the police department has a table. We've got our engineering, some folks here to talk to you about Comer, auditorium, planning and so forth, parks and recreation in the back. So if you have specific questions about some of these areas, please go and see them and just take a look at some of the materials they have. We also, of course, have some great food in the back that was supplied by the Neighborhood Association. I want to thank again the Bibb City Neighborhood Association for co-hosting this with us. We really appreciate it. I'll tell you, there's been some excellent questions tonight. I hope everybody feels like they got their questions answered. This is maybe time for one more. Going once? Going twice? Yes. Here we go.
This won't take but a second. But on behalf of the Bibb Neighborhood Association, I just want to say thank you for coming. We're proud to have you. And it was about 2 years ago in this very room where we had a Neighborhood Watch Association, and we had you come and speak to us. And you encouraged us to change that into a Neighborhood Association. And one of the things was that you have a lot more power that way. Dan, hush up. Oh man. That you have a lot more power when you speak together as a neighborhood, and that certainly happened. And we want to thank you and the management of the city, the public safety folks who are literally Johnny on the spot. And I have made so many DLR calls. Don't look right. That's all I know. Don't look right. Whatever it is, there's a pride that's bubbling up here. We have a lot of different kind of folks. We have owners, we have renters, we have all kinds of folks. And if you're not in the Bibb Neighborhood Association, Steve, I want you to be, because we need your input, and we need your input, sir. And I'd be pleased to take your name and number and for our next meeting in January, which I hope, if the Comer is far enough along, we're going to go and see that over there. But and Public Works, those guys are great. You can't say that the city management does not respond to Bibb Village.
Wow.
Thank you.
Lisa has a quick announcement about the holiday schedule for trash pickup. Lisa, you want to?
Yes, just before we leave, do want to remind you that our holiday schedule is that on Christmas Eve, the city government will be closed. We will have normal garbage pickup, and that is Monday, of course, December the 24th, normal garbage pickup. Landfills and the recycling center will be open on those days. The Citizen Service Center, or our 311 center, will also be open, and then, of course, Recorder's Court. The day after Christmas, you will have the Tuesday garbage pickup on that Wednesday, the 26th. So that the garbage pickup that would have been on Christmas will be picked up on Tuesday, and then Thursday and Fridays, regular garbage schedule will resume. Government Center will be open on Wednesday. All other offices open as well. For New Year's Eve, the Government Center will be open on New Year's Eve. Normal garbage pickup, of course, on that day, everything is open. Recycling center, landfills are open, Recorder's Court. Of course, January 1st, New Year's Day, everything will be closed. On Wednesday, January the 2nd, the Tuesday garbage will be picked up. And then, of course, Thursday and Friday, normal service will resume. And, of course, we are open on that day.
Lisa, let's give that to Rick, and maybe he can scan it and send it if you've got an email list or something, and get it out in your newsletter. That way everyone can get it. All right, Councilor Huff, Councilor Davis, Pops, Councilor Thomas, any closing